Welcome back to a brand new edition of the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Miller. Happy to have you guys here on another edition of Wednesday with Woodley. As every Wednesday, we will sit down with Drake football head coach Joe Woodley. Recap, what happened over the weekend in a tough loss against St. Thomas. Preview what's ahead this weekend as Drake still controls their own destiny, but have a tough road matchup against a top 3 PFL team in Dayton, a team that upset a top tier team in the PFL earlier this season in Presbyterian. So a lot to talk about with Coach. But before we get to any of that, first and foremost, thank you guys so much for your support. Continue to support the show on whatever platform you're listening to, if that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or if you're viewing on YouTube. Make sure to just like, subscribe, comment, rate on all of those pages, as well as follow us all over social media at Media Row Pod. And then, of course, a huge thank you to a sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Kelly's Little Nipper, perfect place to go grab some great food, great drinks, and even better community. Use that keyword in Woodley, and your first drink is on the house. Actually had a buddy send me a message earlier this week, and it was a photo of him and his kid, and he said, "Guess where I'm at?" And it was Kelly's Little Nipper, and it's perfect. It made me so happy because I remember going with my dad to Kelly's Little Nipper. So it's a great place. Love that place so much, and so happy they are a part of the Media Row family. So we are going to sit down with Coach Joe Woodley here in just a few moments, but before we get to that, I do want to recap the Drake men's basketball game from Monday night. It was a fun game. It was a game where I went in with the mindset of Drake needed to do 3 things for me to leave the stadium feeling really excited again about the season. And it wasn't like I lost my excitement for the season by any means, but when you do lose a home opener to start the season, it's been almost 10 years since Drake has lost a home opener. So yeah, there were some concerns, and it was a weird feeling, a feeling you hadn't felt in a long time as a Bulldog fan. So not saying I lost any excitement, but you just wanted to see these 3 things to go, okay, this team is still fine, long season ahead, brand new staff. This team's going to gel just fine. And we'll get into those 3 things that they did well. But before we dive much further into this one, just a quick interview that I had with Coach Henderson after the game, his opening thoughts following Drake's bounce back victory against Simpson at home on Monday, 89-51.
Respond. I think it was really important to get back out on the court pretty quickly after, our game last Thursday against Robert Morris, and it wasn't the outcome we wanted, but to be able to get back on the floor in a fairly quick amount of time, and how our guys responded, I was really proud of. I thought we really set the tone, and that's what I was hoping to see, because like I've said before, against Robert Morris, I felt like they did. And so that's something we needed to work on. And so I was just proud of our guys for setting the tone, especially on the defensive end early.
So like I said, I went into Monday night to the Knapp Center in my head thinking Drake needs to do these 3 things. And number 1, first and foremost, win the game in dominant fashion. Win the game where fans leave going, that game was never in question, because this is Simpson we're talking about. This is a D3 school. This is a school that doesn't have a lot of size. And Drake is over here with multiple guys over the height of 6'9". Drake should just dominate, just should physically impose their will on Simpson. And check right there. Dominant victory. It was their second largest margin of victory, the 38 points with the 89-51, since December 12th, 2024, where last year's team with Bennett Sturts, Daniel Abreu, Mitch Muscari, who, congrats to Mitch, he was on the G League team for, I believe, the Kings or the Suns, and just awesome to see him pursuing the professional career and still getting an opportunity to hopefully make a splash in the NBA. But last year's team put up 55 against St. Ambrose. But talking about this year, just wanted to see that dominant victory, wanted to see this team just impose their will on both sides of the floor, and that's what they did. And then secondly, an issue we had seen really in the first 2 games of the season for Drake is this team offensively really struggled to move the ball, and it was a lot of isolation offense where it was give the ball to Jashawn Thomas or Jalen Quinn, Federico, and you're hoping something good happens from it. And it's funny to talk about a Drake offense in that fashion because during Darren DeVries's years, last year with Ben McCollum's squad, there was a lot of movement, but sometimes we talked about, man, there's just not movement with purpose. This year, you're just wanting to see that ball movement. You're wanting to see guys moving around without the ball because that cliche of move without the ball, your teammates will find you. We just hadn't seen it efficiently from this team. And you'd even hear Coach Henderson, I asked him about just what he thought of his team's ball movement. You know, they record 15 assists, just what he thought about it. And he mentioned how, you know, in these past few games, there's only been like 11 possessions that he can sit back and say, that was a great possession by Drake. Fans felt the same way. So I went into the game. The second thing I wanted to see, efficient ball movement and record 10 plus assists. Check. 15 assists against Simpson after only recording 9 against Robert Morris on last Thursday. Drake had 8 in the first half. So we're well on pace to break that the assist number from the previous game. So again, another huge check mark from what I wanted to see. And then finally, the third thing was control the boards. This team is so big and hadn't been really able to control the rebounding numbers by any means. And that is crazy to think about because all offseason we've talked about, man, so excited to see this Drake team with their size, with their length, how that's just going to propel this team because, man, for 10 years, this Drake team has struggled with size. Those DeVries teams, Garrett Sturtz was your leading rebounder, which his effort rebounding needs to be studied. He needs to be just like a rebounding coach. I'm sure that's what DeVries has him doing over there in Indiana because you still had Darnell Brody who was big, but really other than that, the size wasn't there for those DeVries teams. Then you go to McCollum, and that team was very small. I think Cam Mania was listed at 6'9", but I think he was truly like 6'7", 6'8". There was no one else tall. That was the tallest player. So you now bring in a squad that Henderson has brought in of multiple guys over 6'10", great length, great athleticism. Now can they just get in position? It seemed like Federico at moments in those first 2 games was pretty strong, boxing out. Isaiah Carr just fundamentally boxing out, sometimes got pushed around, was in a wrong position. It's going to happen early on in the season, but didn't happen on Monday night. Drake absolutely utilized their size and physically just imposed their will against Simpson. 48-34 on the rebounds and just check, check, and check. I went into the Knapp Center wanting to see a dominant performance, and that's what we got. And again, I don't want it to sound like if those things didn't happen that, season's over. Not by any means. It is a long season. It is a very long season. And no matter what, you're going to have opportunities to really make a splash. And it's just you want to see progress in these non-con games. And that's what we saw last night. Now, you can also Can also back up and say it is Simpson. It is a team that was very undersized going up against Drake. So how much did we learn about this team? And to be frank, I don't think we learned a lot about this team, but for the first time this season, we really saw them play their best basketball through 3 games. So now they get another chance on Friday against a more formidable opponent against SIUE, and so we will see how that game goes. We'll, of course, be there covering that game. Some bonuses that we saw that were very positive for this team. The bench played great. 36 points coming from the bench. Applehawn scores a team-high 15 points on 6 of 11 shooting. Drake shot the ball really efficiently. Goes hand in hand with that ball movement, with the player movement. Isaiah Carr puts up 10-plus points. And then the paint, a question I actually asked Henderson about on last Thursday's loss to Robert Morris is the team's struggle defending the paint. Didn't struggle against Simpson. 36 points to Simpson's 10. Drake improves now to 2-1, a huge victory against Simpson. Just a one you needed. Just for the fans early on in the season, just give us that one game where you just absolutely dominate, and that's what they gave the fans on Monday night. Drake women play Iowa on tomorrow in Carver, Iowa, the 21st ranked team in the country. This women's team is unbelievable at Iowa. They absolutely cleaned the floor with Evansville. Looked like 2 completely different games, 2 different sports out there. Drake women, they just need to figure out a few things lineup wise. I like Vice. I thought that lineup in that second half was probably Drake's best lineup we've seen if Vice can continue to play like that off the bench. But really difficult to travel to Iowa City to go up against a team as good and as fundamentally sound as the Iowa Hawkeyes are. Vice isn't going to have anything easy or given to her in the paint because you have Hannah Stolke, who's one of the best post players in the country right now. The post players are going to be the deciding factor for Drake. And then if you can just get a few threes to fall from other players other than Abby Alsma having to lead the charge offensively. So just looking forward to this experience on Thursday and the game between Drake and Iowa. This team for Iowa is a contender each and every year. I've never been able to meet Jan Jensen, so looking forward to chatting with her. I was fortunate enough to be able to interview Lisa Bluter a handful of times, and she was wonderful. And so being able to meet some of the players on the Iowa women's side, as well as their coaches, just going to be a really fun Thursday. Looking forward to it. Follow along at Media Row Pod because we're going to have a lot of fun. Tip-off is at 7:30, and even though Iowa looks like they're just playing a different sport than everyone else out there early on this season, we play these games for a reason. Who knows? There might be some magic in the air in Carver for the Drake women. That'll do it for our basketball section. Do want to get to our guest of the day, as always, on Wednesdays. Happy to have him here, the head coach of the Drake Bulldogs, Joe Woodley, here on the Media Row podcast. So, Coach, thank you as always for doing this for me. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being willing to do this throughout the whole season. And is it as crazy to you as it is to me that you're blinking and now you're down to your last 2 regular season games as the first year at Drake?
Yeah. It was Justin, and once you kind of get in that rhythm routine and they just kind of fly by. It seems like really just yesterday we were out at San Diego, and it's already been several weeks since then. And but yeah, it's it goes by in the blink of an eye, and that's usually the message you try to convey to your players, especially your upperclassmen, your seniors, because it does go so fast. You just got to make sure that you're embracing every moment and just making sure you're having zero regrets, especially here down the stretch with so much to play for.
And so last weekend didn't go as planned. Team battled, had an opportunity to win the game, despite some mistakes, some miscues that we talked about in the post-game press conference. But now, since you've had time to go back, look at the film, meet with the team, meet with the coaches, positions, just how are you seeing the staff, the players kind of respond early on this week?
Yeah, I don't know that of course we haven't practiced yet, but we've had meetings and, had to wear the loss, so to speak. And, told the guys about just carrying the scar from that game and move forward, but you got to move on. You can't sit and dwell on, you can't let, one loss turn into two, so to speak. So you just, like I said, you just got to acknowledge the fact that we didn't play good enough to win the football game, and really you got to give credit to the opponent. They came out, and not to say that we weren't ready to play, but maybe they were just a little bit more. And we just made too many critical mistakes and critical moments, and it's not all on the players. Certainly, the coaching staff. There's some things that we definitely could have done better, and you live and you learn from it. And we got a new staff that's working together for the first time, and we're obviously we hit some adversity, but for the most part, I think we've responded like I thought we would. We've got a great staff and great camaraderie, as we do within our roster, our players. That you could tell that that they care about this place, they care about this program, and you could feel that on Sunday, or certainly Saturday after the game, and then Sunday as we came in, it was a very business-like approach. We had to, you have to rip the scabs off and let it bleed a little bit, and our guys handled it, and we'll kind of see how they handle it here moving forward. But we're certainly on to date and a really good football team.
So, how have you seen this team throughout the season gel, start to become more than just a football team, starting to gel on and off the field? What are you seeing from a coach's perspective on that point?
Oh, I think, like I said, I think that camaraderie has been there for the most part all season, and I think the challenges that we faced, really on both ends was just a new staff, and I think we're to a point where we all believe in one another right now, and that's hard to you can't microwave that. That's not going to happen. It's not going to be a quick fix. We had to earn some trust and really on both sides of it. And I'd like to think we're there again. Coming from a player perspective, I think you probably have to talk to them about that, because it's still very much new in this process. But I think like I said, I think the camaraderie we have, the brotherhood, so to speak. I think those are all in a healthy spot right now, and you can just tell by the way they care about one another, and really just care about this program in general. It's pretty obvious how much they do, and obviously we're there as coaches as well. This is our livelihood. This is how we make a living. We put everything we have into this, and but you got to pour into the players as well, and I think we're doing that. I think we challenge them on a daily basis, and we ask a lot out of them, and I know that's hard at times, but I think they do appreciate that. I think really discipline is probably one of the purest forms of love, if you will. And I think that's important moving forward for us, is to be disciplined in our approach, and if we can do that here down the stretch, I think we're going to like the results.
So one of the reasons I really wanted to start doing these Wednesdays with Woodley on the show is because I wanted to give fans and listeners that kind of behind the scenes look at your team. And we talked a little bit about Logan and how he is, looked upon as a leader, but maybe he's not as vocal of a leader. He's kind of got that quiet confidence you mentioned last week. So who is the vocal leader for this team when you're getting down against St. Thomas and you have 3 minutes to go, you have the ball, a chance to win? Who's the guy kind of on that sideline helping pump up the team and get this team motivated?
Yeah, number of them, Justin, and we've got four captains. Two of them are injured right now. But obviously all those guys are pretty vocal, and usually I don't necessarily buy into that unless I believe it's authentic, and I truly do believe it's authentic. Certainly from those captains and our leadership group. We've got about 12 guys on our leadership crew, and um, I don't necessarily believe that a leader has to be uh, uh, a rah-rah or real vocal guy all the time. But yeah, I mean, there's a number of them. I mean, I guess probably the first couple that kind of come to my mind, at least on the offensive side. Nobody gets that sideline going, or nobody's more into the game than Woody, and really, and Taj kind of falls in that same boat as well. And then on the defensive side, you certainly have, Sean, definitely one of those guys that, is real vocal and guys listen. And, I hate singling guys out, but, and of course the other captains that are down right now, Vandy and Shrimp, both very much so. And certainly Vandy, right now, because there's possibility we may get him back here, at some point, hopefully. And, and this is his last season, so he knows he misses it, and you can certainly tell he misses it, and the way he is in practice, and coaching those guys up, you can just tell he wants to be out there so bad. But yeah, like I said, I don't buy too much into the vocal piece of it. It's important, don't get me wrong, because it shows that you care and shows your teammates that you care, and as long as it's not phony, and I don't see any of that from the guys that we do have that do speak their mind. I don't believe it's phony. It's not. They're not doing it because it's convenient or a coach is around. They truly do care, and they're highly competitive. And yeah, we're fortunate we have those kind of guys.
So it's funny you mentioned, like your coaching style, you're not always needing to be a rah-rah guy. Kind of that. Are you more like a Logan in that sense of you are a quiet confidence. You just have confidence in what you guys have been doing throughout the week, where you feel like you don't need to always be clapping, jumping on the sidelines.
Yeah, I just don't think that's in my nature. And there's nothing wrong with that. And believe me, there's times I get certainly worked up, and
Oh yeah.
and I think that's come with time. And my, as a coach, it really just depends on what your role is. When I was a defensive coordinator at a young age, yeah, I was probably a little more fiery. But the older you get, I guess the more wisdom, so to speak. And then as soon as you step in, or sit in the chair of the head coach, not that you need to change who you are, but you carry a certain responsibility, and you kind of reflect the whole program. So again, I just believe that you should be poised, and never too high, never too low. And I'd like to think I'm that way. I guess you maybe have to ask our players that, but I think they'd tell you I'm not necessarily a rah-rah guy. I try to get my points across, maybe in team meeting type settings, or a little more closed off. I don't know. I just I got advice a long time ago, and when you get into this profession, really any profession you get into, just be yourself, and if you do that, you're going to be able to live with results. I just don't believe you can turn it off and on, and be somebody you're not. You got to be who you are. Sometimes you do lose your composure, but that also shows that you care. But if you're a crazy guy, 24/7, man, that certainly, I think that loses its flavor over time. And again, there's a lot of guys that are that way, and it's successful for them, and it's maybe because of that's who they are. I think that's the biggest thing, is just being authentic, and staying true to yourself. And I guess that's probably my best answer for that, Justin.
We talked on right after the game in the press box about those penalties, and just what what is the team? I know you mentioned on Trav and Ross, there's not really a practice or a drill you can do to clean up some of those false starts, some of those pre-snap penalties. But just what are you and your staff doing to try to clean it up?
Yeah, well, actually, we actually got out of the game Saturday with, and I made the remark to our guys. It actually improved. A couple of the penalties, we're down in the red area, and but the actual yardage, for penalties that we had was 24 yards. So, not an abundance of yardage, and really one of them might have fallen on our shoulders as coaches, but. Um, yeah, I mean, there's things you can do. You can discipline them after practice and things like that. But you'd really just prefer to, just kind of play clean and do it the right way, and not have to always discipline them for the mistakes they made. But that's certainly one practice you can do. But at the end of the day, it's just having better poise and just being in charge of your own job and doing your job to the best of your ability and don't lose focus. And like I said, I can sometimes live with the aggressive penalties. I think we had the one Mikey had a PI, and he just got turned around, and at least he didn't. Now, what I liked his eyes to be better, and that's on, but and he knows that it's I'm
Mhm.
not throwing him out or anything like that, but at the end of the day, he kept it out of the end zone too. So. We had a procedure penalty early in the game. I think we might have had a face mask in there. Again, the face mask, the PIs. I can stomach those a little bit more so than more so the pre-snap stuff, and that falls on our shoulders for not getting them prepared or or whatever. There's a million ways you can go about it, Justin, but we're still well in the upper half of the league of least penalized teams, and like I said, it's always my goal to be one of the least penalized teams, and sometimes that can go one of two ways. Sometimes you're playing too passive to not make to not have penalties. So there's a fine line there. It's just like I said, you can always live with those competitive penalties, and the other ones. Well, those are the hard ones to stomach, and I think we were. I don't know if better is the right word. You shouldn't have any, but it's certainly gotten better, I think. And believe me, our guys are well aware of it too. So.
It's funny though because everyone that talked about this game, of course, they mentioned the the penalties in that second half that in a close game everyone's going to point an eye at, or point a finger at, I should say. But you guys still put yourself in a position to win, regardless of those miscues. And then even though you lost the game, you're still in the driver's seat right now in the PFL and still control your own destiny. And just what does that show for your team and your confidence moving forward as now you prepare for Dayton, a really strong team in the PFL that's right behind you guys?
Yeah, we talked about it, and you can't get too far in front of yourself, but you're in November, and you're playing for a conference championship, and it's a one game playoff, and at the end of the day, we're sitting in the same seat as we were a week ago, because obviously Davidson pulled off an upset, and now had we have won Saturday, we'd be really in the driver's seat, but we're still sitting in the same spot as we were a week ago, and got an awful lot to play for. And that's not necessarily the conference championship or playoffs or anything like that. But you always have a lot to play for. You're on a football team. You care about your teammates. You care about the place that you're at. That's reason enough to go play. Go play your best football, and it's an added bonus that we do have a kind of a carrot dangling for us to go achieve some goals that we set out to do before the year, and it's all there for us still. That's the beauty of where we're at right now. And if you'd have told me at the beginning of the year you got 2 games left, you control your own destiny. If you'd have told me that back in August, boy, I'd have sure taken that. And I think about any team would take that. So we've positioned ourselves. Yeah, Saturday was a setback, and it was hard to hard to stomach, hard to swallow, and then especially after you go back and watch the film, a lot of it was, things we just did to ourselves. And, it was unfortunate when the moments that they happened, but, it's part of the game. We've been on the winning side of some of those things a good portion of this year, and we just weren't Saturday, and it came back and bit us. And, but you learn from it, you move on, you dust yourself off, and, you go at it again. That's the only way you can do it.
And so you've talked about how, you don't want to get too carried away. You got to focus on Dayton before you start, thinking playoff, start even thinking about Morehead State coming up in 2 weeks. But how do you do that as a coach? How do you balance, especially coming off of a loss, an emotional loss, keeping the team even keeled, making sure they're not looking ahead, making sure they take this one day at a time?
Yeah, I just think, that's how you have to do it. It's just, you just got to be consistent. If obviously we've had a lot of successful Saturdays this year, and this one was a setback, and yeah, certain things need to be brought to the forefront that we need to improve upon. But we're going to go out, we're going to go to work, and get right back at it. I told them we had our team meeting Sunday night. I said, like I had mentioned earlier, you're gonna carry this scar, so to speak, but you got to move on. And as soon as we adjourn to that meeting, we're just putting all of our efforts and focus into improving grade. And that's been the clear message all along. I said, if we certainly got the talent, we've got the toughness, and if we do the things that we're capable of doing, we're going to like the outcome. But you just don't want to have any regrets, especially at this time of year with what it is that we have to play for. But we're just in search of trying to improve ourselves, and not necessarily focused on what this opponent does. Obviously, you got to be prepared for the schematic part of things, but really, what it boils down to, who's going to be better in the critical moments, who's going to be better fundamentally, blocking, tackling. I know it sounds boring, but when you go back, when you lose a game, you go back and watch some of the things that may have cost you. It's those things. It's not necessarily. It's never a scheme for the most part. So sometimes they get the better of you on some things, but when there's breakdowns, it's usually a fundamental thing, and those are the things that we have to improve upon. And like I said, just bring to the forefront, and if we do that, certainly like what our football team can do.
So this weekend you traveled to Dayton, a team that is no stranger to upsetting top dogs in the PFL. I mean, earlier this season they beat Presbyterian. Just what have you seen from them that really impresses you, and just kind of a quick overview on this team for fans?
Yeah, I'm really impressed with them, and they went through some adversity. I don't know if you'd say it's somewhat similar to us, but their starting quarterback's been out. At least the guy that started the year for him, he got hurt in that Butler game, and I think that gave Butler a slight edge just because they maybe hadn't prepared a ton without that guy. Now, credit to Butler. Butler won the football game. I'm not taking any credit away from them there, but I just think this is a very, number one, it's a very talented football team on both sides of the football. I'm thoroughly impressed with their personnel, their offensive line. They've kind of figured some things out at quarterback. This quarterback had been a starter. They just brought a transfer in a year ago from Youngstown State. He was the starter for most of the season. So this kid has a number of snaps under his belt as a starter, and they've figured out how they're going to look with him moving forward. They got a pretty dynamic kid that plays receiver for them. They do a lot of different things with him. They put him at Wildcat a good portion of that Presbyterian game, and he rushed for over 130 yards.
Wow.
Very dynamic football player. They've got a couple of running backs that are tough. They get north and south. They're physical. They know what they're doing on offense. They know what they're trying to accomplish, and they've got a lot of really good players doing it. And the more you watch them, the more you just appreciate the way they play. Especially or I shouldn't say especially, but as I'm talking about the offense, and then defensively, again, just really impressed with the personnel that they have up front. Very physical outfit. Linebackers are really good, and Their secondary players are pretty skilled. They've got one kid, number 13. He's as good a football player as I've seen in this league. At least through 9 games. This being our 10th game, just watching him on tape, they line him up everywhere. They'll line him up at safety. They'll line him up at linebacker. They'll line him up at defensive end. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. I kind of liken him to I think whenever Brian Urlacher played with New Mexico, I think they called him like the Lobo. Basically, just putting the best football player, wherever you need to make something happen. And this kid, holy cow, is he good. And I just really impressed with him. And like I said, I just think they're very sound fundamentally. Again, and their special teams are good. They've got some things going on at kicker. They're trying to figure out who their kicker is, but other than that, they're really good in all aspects of their of their football team. And
thank you so much to Joe Woodley for coming on the show each and every Wednesday. I still can't believe, like I started the interview off of, I can't believe we blinked and we're already down to the final 2 regular season games of the year. It doesn't feel right that Thanksgiving is 3 weeks away. It doesn't feel right that I'm getting text messages from family members asking what the plan is for Thanksgiving. I'm sitting over here like, didn't November just start? Isn't football season just like in the middle of their year? This doesn't feel right at all, but it's been an absolute blast. I can't thank Joe enough for making time each and every week, so really appreciate that. Thanks again to Kelly's Little Nipper for sponsoring and supporting the show. Thank you guys, as always, the listeners and viewers, for supporting. Devin and Casey, thank you guys for allowing me to make this show look more professional with your great photos. Go follow them all over social media. And then quick programming note before we wrap up today's show. Just want to let you know the podcast for Friday will be out just a little later than usual. Usually try to get, I pre-record these shows the day before, but we'll be in Iowa City covering the Drake women's game against the Hawkeyes on Thursday night in Iowa City. So having to travel, won't be able to pre-record it Thursday night. So we'll have to record it early Friday morning. So won't be out at its normal time. We will get it out though by noon at the latest. Like we'll make sure we get you covered for this weekend. So join us Friday where we will recap hopefully a really exciting game in Iowa City, and then of course do all of our fun football previews and picks. We will see you guys then on the Media Row podcast.